Welcome back to our table. Last week we began our conversation with author Susan Boyer and independent bookstore owner Jill Hendrix of Fiction Addiction in Greenville, South Carolina. We examined how good stories can be a catalyst in bringing business to life as well as support local economies. Join us now for the last half of that conversation.
All right. We're excited.
Jill, can you tell if a book is going to make it?
So there's a belief in publishing that if a book does well in the South, that it has a good chance of breaking out nationally.
What?
I have never heard of that. Are you serious?
Yep, it's very true. I think that the book that really fostered this belief was The Help by Catherine Stockett.
Oh, okay.
Makes sense.
Some people think that that was an instant bestseller, but it wasn't. It was really strongly supported in the South, and then it just built up steam, and it built up steam, and it built up steam, and then it really hit. So if this philosophy is really true, then I think it's because Southerners are kind of natural storytellers. We have a lot of oral storytelling tradition, and we have an innate ear for story, voice, and character. And so those are the three elements I look for in fiction.
The three elements were story, voice, and character, or they were the ear?
Story, voice, and character.
Story, voice, and character. Story, voice, and character.
What are some of the key other qualities that you would like to see in authors and books and illustrations? I mean, what are something that you would like to see maybe moving forward?
For us, really having that local connection helps us sell a book. The other thing is if it's a series, then, once I've gotten somebody hooked on book one, then it's great to know that, I've got a built-in readership. And then for nonfiction, there are just certain topics that always do well for us. So there was a book that came out recently about the Vanderbilts in Biltmore House. And that was called The Last Castle. And that was I could just tell from the catalog copy that we were going to do really well with that.
Well, you think about the Vanderbilts. Gloria Vanderbilt, Anderson Cooper's mother, just passed away, a couple of months ago, maybe. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of interest, I think, that renewed the Vanderbilt name in American life. Anderson Cooper's mother was a Vanderbilt. Who knew, right? And then people started reading about her, and I can see that those people who got really interested in that whole family saga would want to buy a book.
Absolutely.
Yes, there are a lot of coincidences like that. So Greenville author Melinda Long did the How I Became a Pirate and Pirates Don't Change Diapers, and her book was in process, her first one, for years and years and years, and it finally released 2 months after the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And so she was like, it was super lucky that happened for me. And you see that a lot, just Absolutely. Of coincidence.
Yeah. Well, Susan, you have several books in your series, and we talked a little bit before we got started, just getting to know you. Where do you find your inspiration for some of your books?
That's an interesting question, and I get that a lot. Really and truly, the answer to that is that I'm not quite right.
We need to get her connected with Ann Norton.
It's just the way my brain works. It's like normal people will see something, for example, it could be anything. It could be a couple broken down by the side of the road. And normal people will drive by and they will think, I hope they have AAA. I hope they have a cell phone. I hope everything's going to be all right. And I look at that and I think, he's going to kill her and drag her off into the woods, and they're never going to find her body. It's going to be on the news tomorrow. She's missing. I just think differently. I see things and I think, but what if? What if? But what if this happened? But what if instead of this, it happened this way? And so then I just start extrapolating the story, and eventually I have a book.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about your main character.
Okay. So Liz grew up in the coastal region and near Charleston, and she went to Clemson. She got a degree and got her private investigator's license here, lived in Greenville for a while. She was married and then divorced, and then her partner is her ex-husband's brother at the beginning of book one. So there's sort of a little bit of drama there. And then she learns that her grandmother's been killed, and she goes back to see if she can figure out what's happened. Her brother is the chief of police on the island where they live. Now, the island of Stella Maris, where she grew up, is a fictional island. I stole it off of a Catholic church on Sullivan's Island. So my island's actually just a little north of Isle of Palms. So you've got Sullivan's Island, then Isle of Palms, and then just north of that, actually, Deweese Island sits there. I sort of erased that spot on the map and put my island there. So Liz lives there, but she can come into Charleston to solve cases, because I figured I didn't want that Cabot Cove syndrome thing going on. I knew I could only drop so many bodies on that little island before it became unbelievable. So she has clients in Charleston, and we get to roam around the streets of Charleston in the books, and that's fun.
Excellent. And what got you started as an author?
Oh, gosh, I've just always loved books. You know, my whole life I've loved books, and I've loved words. And, you know, I would write, you know, different things and wanted to be a writer, but it's hard. You can't just get a degree in literature or writing or whatever and then say, okay, I'm going to be a novelist, and you have a steady paycheck. It doesn't work that way. So I had to do something else for a while, and then eventually circled back around to writing.
Excellent. I love that story.
Jill, what are some of your tips as a coach to other booksellers?
Sure. So when I coach other booksellers, I share, you know, general best practices for our industry, but I also push them to discover their unique value to their community. Every business is personal, and it's going to fit into their community differently, and the owner is going to have their own strengths and weaknesses, their own likes and dislikes. And when you start a business, you should start something that supports you and that you are having, you know, joy doing. So once you kind of hone in on that, what makes you special and your business special from every other bookstore out there, then you can really use that to leverage it in your community.
That's good. How would it be different for a bookseller, an independent bookseller in another part of the country or in another kind of community, maybe a smaller community or, you know, Chicago? It was not the same as Greenville.
Sure. So I coached a bookstore owner who is at the beach, and she's in a very seasonal place. She's on the Outer Banks. So she gets like all of her business in like 3 or 4 months of the year. And then there's a time period where there's just locals, and then she gets another little hit at the holidays when people come back in town. And so that's a very different business. And you're going to have to manage your money a lot more carefully that way than you would if you're in, you know, an area that has more reliable traffic all year round.
That's a good point. Susan.
Yes.
So diversity and inclusion seem to be a hallmark in the success of the independent bookstore's renaissance. What are some ways you have incorporated diversity and inclusion in some of your writing?
To be very honest, I'm a storyteller. You know, I just tell the story. And so each story, as it's evolving in my head, it has certain characters, and some characters are more diverse than others, I guess. So by the time the story is fully formed, there's a wide range of characters from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of experiences and just all sorts of characters. So it's pretty much what each story demands, and that's what drives. I'm not really seeking to make or to use certain types of characters, but they come up. They just pop up and populate the stories because they're part of the story I'm trying to tell.
Right. They might be on the side of the road changing a tire.
They could be. They could very well be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Jill, how do you create an atmosphere of openness as a bookseller?
Well, I think it's very important to understand that any sort of reading is just valuable in and of itself. And there's a lot of studies that show like how well kids do if they read and how much just reading contributes to your success in life. And so, you know, we don't judge at all what you want to read. Like if you want to read a graphic novel, if you want to read a romance, if you want to read a mystery, if you only want to read works in translation, we are happy to help you whatever you like to read. So, you know, that's really important to convey to my staff, that just because you don't like to read something, you know, don't, you know, you want to be open to the fact that other people will like this genre and that we carry whatever we think our community wants and would like to read.
That's an interesting answer. Do you think there are people who feel like maybe bookstore owners or librarians or authors are kind of judging them because they like mysteries or they like romance rather than that they like elevated literature?
I do think that there's that perception, and there might actually be the reality with certain people. I remember in college, I applied to work at an independent bookstore in New York, and you had to take this quiz of like matching up authors and who wrote the books, and it was all classics. There wasn't anything contemporary on the list. So I don't know why that was part of their interview process, but it was. So you wonder, and maybe just that community, that's what they like to read. It was mostly professors or college students, and that's what they were serving. But I do think there's a sense that people worry they're going to be judged. you know, and so
I think very often readers of the romance genre feel that way because they feel like they're being judged a little bit because they feel like, you know, the perception is this book is not as worthy as, say, a literary novel or whatever. I think there is that.
yeah, and so we try and counteract that. I mean, we stock romance. I read romance.
Right.
You know, we want
No,
everybody.
I didn't mean that you did. No. Not in this store. No, please, no. I did
No,
not
but
mean that.
I think people worry that, you
Right.
know, just reading
In
for
general.
escapism is bad.
Right.
And I don't think that that's true. I think any reading whatsoever has great benefits.
You know, we were talking with, if I'm remembering correctly, Elizabeth Goddard when she was on with Anne talking about genealogy. And she said, look, I'm going on memory here, but she said, look, I write stories for people to come home at the end of the day, open up, and just have fun and relax for an hour before they go to bed. They're romantic suspense novels, and the whole purpose is to entertain you.
Right.
And I thought that was really neat that people want to do that. I mean, that's why I read too. I do read for information, but I don't at the end of the day want to sit down for an hour and read something that's heavy.
I think far more people want to read for relaxation. And what relaxes some might be different from what relaxes others, but they want to be entertained. They want to be told a good story.
I think that's an excellent point. Because we've had several authors going from a science fiction genre to a mystery to an international story. So we've had lots of different genres, and I think that's so important because we do have different tastes. We do have different palates, and you know, a steady diet of one thing might be more than I want. I don't want that. I want something different tonight. You know, I'm not just going to eat pizza every night. Okay, maybe we would.
Regrettably.
I have a follow-up question on that. Jill, do you have a wish for the future for booksellers?
My wish for the future for booksellers is that the industry as a whole would just be more profitable for us, because I feel like that a lot of people don't start bookstores or can't be a bookseller, even though they would love to, just because the standard of living isn't there. So that would be my wish.
So
for the
would you
future.
tell a future bookseller?
So I would tell a future bookseller that it is one of these businesses that you really have to watch the money on. So a lot of people get into bookselling just because they love to read, and they're really afraid of math. And so I would say that I'm sorry, you have to be able to look at your business financials and really like be on top of it. You don't have to do a lot of math, but you know, you can't be completely afraid of it.
Gotcha. How about you, Susan? What would you wish for authors coming in the future?
Honestly, I'm drawing a complete blank because that's sort of a general question, I guess, for me. And I'm trying to think, you know, to wish. I mean, of course, all authors want sales. They want to find their readers, to find their tribe, I guess, the people who connect with their books. And so I guess if I could think of one thing that would be beneficial for virtually every author would be some tool to make it easier to find your readers, your tribe, the people that are going to connect with your books. And there's some tools out there that we can, you know, use that help with that. But if we could just dial that down to a little bit more of a sure thing, you know, better ways to connect with our readers.
That's excellent.
That is excellent. I never thought about it quite that way, but there's a whole group of people who want to pretend that Liz Talbot is a real person just as much as you do.
They
and they're
do,
having
they
fun
do.
with it.
And you know, I can find some of my readers online, and then I think some of them, because they're not online, many readers are not online. Many readers are not on Facebook or whatever the social media of the day is. I had this conversation with my sister once because she's not at all on social media. She's not on anything. And I'm like, you're the reader that authors are trying to connect with. You're the one we're trying to reach, and we don't know how to. And she said, but I don't want to be reached. And see, that's the thing. She said, I want to go into a bookstore and browse and pick out the books that I want. I don't want to be marketed to. And I'm like, I get that because I feel the same way. But as an author, I have to do something to try to bring my books to the attention of readers who are really by their nature, you know, that they just want to go into the bookstore and browse. So, you know, there's sort of a, what do you do with that?
Yeah, it's a both and. Because I heard you sharing a little bit earlier about so many books, so little time. You know, and we do have that captivation of certain amount of minutes in a day. And yet, I don't want to have my day onslaughted with social media because that is a time sucker. It's going to take time away. And so I think it's almost a marriage. That bookstore
you depend on the bookseller.
is a marriage of that need and that celebration of I do want to have that. But then I also realize some of the benefit of having the social media is exposing people that would never have picked up that book and finally going, oh, when Mary Poppins came out and the resurgence of Mary Poppins, I had not read the series of books. And so to have somebody have that opportunity through something in media, I think does give people an opportunity maybe that hadn't. So it's a balance to find that.
We have one signature question we like to end our conversations with. What's a metaphor that can help us understand how authors and booksellers support the local economy?
Well, I think I've got a good metaphor for you.
I'm really glad you do.
So there's a concept in science called a keystone species. And there's a fabulous TED Talk about this. You can just Google how wolves change rivers. And the concept is that reintroducing just a few wolves back into Yellowstone National Park changed the entire course of a river. So the keystone species is often only recognized in their absence. So it was only once there were no wolves left in Yellowstone that you realize the consequences. So the deer weren't scared and they browsed all the vegetation and the river eroded and it changed its course and all of this stuff. So I feel that independent bookstores are a keystone species. We are the ones that take a lot of chances on new authors. We can afford to stock books that may only work locally or in a small market and not nationally. And without us, the river of books published is going to become narrower and narrower, and the ecosystem for everyone, readers, publishers, and authors, changes for the worse.
I love that.
Can we just stand up and applaud? I mean,
that is a fantastic.
That's brilliant.
Yes.
It was quite brilliant. I would not dream of trying to follow that.
Thank you.
You got to come up with something.
I honestly,
Gardens are
Something,
every time.
food. Think of food. Something.
Rhymes. Yeah, food. Let's talk
While
about food.
you're thinking about it, I want to respond to your metaphor with the immediate thing that came to my mind was the butterfly effect.
What is the butterfly effect?
The butterfly effect is when you change one small thing and then it has this really big consequence down the line that you didn't really see. So it's very related. Yeah. So, the keystone species, taking them out of the equation could be the butterfly effect that has, this enormous consequence that you're not foreseeing.
Okay, so I have my metaphor.
All right. It gave you some time.
So, yeah, thank you. So I think that an independent bookstore is very much like a buffet. They're a buffet of books, and Jill has carefully selected what is in the buffet in this store because there's so many dishes available to be on the buffet, and you can't possibly sample some of everything because you would be too full. And so here you can sample all the best things because it's been put together for you by someone who really understands all these dishes.
I like that. Then you also have some choice, but you're not so overwhelmed with choice that you can't pick what you want.
And this is a perfect metaphor because at Susan's launch party, she has this wonderful caterer and the food is just divine.
She really is. I have to say, I looked into her. She's...
Okay, tell us again. It's Liz Talbot. Tell us a little bit about the books and then where we can buy them and where people can connect with you on social media and online.
Okay. Well, obviously you can buy them here. There's a shelf of them over there. So Fiction Addiction always has my books in stock, and you can virtually always get a signed copy of whichever book you want. Number 8 comes out September 3rd. The launch party is here September 3rd from 5:30 to 7:30. And if you want to pre-order a copy so that you're sure, this helps Jill know how many books to order. So you can do that through the store. And let's see, number 9 comes out in May, and it will be followed by number 10 in November of next year. Beyond that, I'm not certain. We'll see. But there will be at least 10 books in the series.
And they are mystery novels set in the Low Country of South Carolina.
And they all start with the word Low Country. So it's like Low Country Boil, Bombshell, Boneyard, Bordello, Book Club, Bonfire, Bookshop, Boomerang, and then I'm not going to tell you what number 9 will be.
But they all start with B?
They all start with
B?
B-O, yeah.
Okay.
So Low Country. and then another word.
Yeah.
It starts
Okay.
with B. Awesome. And then people can connect with you on your website.
Yes, SusanMBoyer.com. And I'm also on Facebook. All the links are there. Facebook, Goodreads, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram. Gosh, I can't even think.
We will link it to the show notes.
We will do our best. And tell us a little bit about how people can find Fiction Addiction if they live in Greenville, or is it possible to order anything online from you?
Sure. We have a website at www.fiction-addiction.com, and we ship all over the country and even some internationally. And we do a lot of pre-order campaigns for Susan, for other authors. For our local authors, you can order books and get them personalized. And, authors like Susan will stop in from time to time and sign a book specifically for someone before we ship it. And then if you're here in town, we're located behind Haywood Mall on Woods Crossing Road in the shopping center with Boardwalk and fried green tomatoes.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for letting us actually have our podcast remote. This was so exciting.
It was. It was a lot of fun.
Thank
I'm
you so
gonna-
much for having us.
I'm going to
This
buy a
was
Low
fun.
Country Boil before I leave. That'll be fun.
Absolutely. Get it
Thank
signed.
you.
Yes.
Well, absolutely.
There you go.
Thank
there
you.
you go. Well, what some said was the death of books in bookstores has actually become a bounty of lively activity. People are looking to connect through words, and many are doing this through their local bookstore. We are so thankful to have Jill and Susan with us tonight. So thank you for being with us at our table, actually Jill's table. And so next week, we're going to be talking with Tom LeGrand and Brendan Scott about how sports stories inspire, entertain, and bring teams together. We would love to have you leave a review. Make sure you rate us. And as always, you are welcome at our table.
We'll see you for the conversation next week.